You're watching HCAM TV.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to HCAM Sports Talk Live. I'm your host, Tom Nappy, and with us today we have Bob Hamilton, Mike Terosian, and Hopkinton High School Athletic Director Rich Cormier. Rich, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Very good. So we're just at the end of a successful fall season. A lot of fun games on the weekends. How did everything go during the fall season? It seemed to go pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm just happy that we're here talking about the fact that we made it through the fall season. When this all started, I don't think anyone knew exactly how it would go and if we'd make it through. And with just our final two field hockey games this weekend, I don't want to jinx field hockey, but it looks like, hopefully we've made it all the way through our fall one schedule. Certainly some bumps along the way. School had to close down a couple times, things like that. But we had, we were very, very fortunate. I'm really proud of the students and our coaches and how they handled the modifications and the challenges that this season brought.
Well, you all did a great job making sure this season was able to continue on throughout, and it was certainly fun to cover. And now also joining us, we have Jared Keene from the Metrowest Daily News as well. He may jump in with a question or two. We made it through the fall season just about. We have the one last field hockey weekend left this Saturday. And actually, before we continue on, why don't we talk a little bit about what happened this past weekend. On Saturday, November 7th, JV girls soccer and ice win for the Hillers. Varsity also won, and then JV field hockey, they got a 3-0 win over Bellingham. Then they tie in the varsity game. And then on Sunday, we had a pair of boys soccer games, and varsity boys soccer as well as JV boys soccer both got wins. And here are the games coming up this weekend, Saturday, November 14th. The Hillers take on Medway. We'll have JV field hockey at 10 a.m., followed by varsity field hockey at 11:45 a.m., airing live on HCAM Ed as well as our YouTube page. That's this Saturday, November 14th. So now that we got that out of the way, how are we looking for winter sports? Has there been any discussion as to what's going to be played and what's not? Any news for us?
So the big news was that last Friday, the state released their updated guidelines through the EEA, which is the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. That's the government body that's really been regulating sports since this pandemic began. And I have to say, personally, people are always going to feel one way or the other. You're going to have people who are really happy. You're going to have people that are very, very frustrated. For me, I was pleasantly surprised. We had a lot of modifications with our fall sports. Anyone that's watched our soccer and field hockey contests, even cross country, we had to make significant modifications, and that's considered a low risk sport. So I really didn't know what to expect now that we're kind of moving inside. We have some high risk sports as well as moderate risk sports. So I was pleasantly surprised by those guidelines that sort of set the stage for us to have a pretty full winter season. There's still some steps that need to be taken, but I'm certainly hopeful that we're going to have a pretty robust winter season, for the Hillers.
Now, we do know there'll be no postseason tournaments. There'll be no tournaments in general. So let's start off with basketball, I guess. They're using the athletic center currently as classroom space to socially distance the students. So could that create any problems in regards to basketball being played?
So no, it's a great question. We're going to be able to play basketball, assuming again we get the full go ahead to play basketball, which I expect that we will. Just so that the viewers and everyone knows, we won't know definitively until I believe it's November 20th. That's when the MIAA board of directors will really put out their final say on the winter season. And whether or not any sports get moved to another season, what the final modifications may be, things of that nature. Right now, all the sport committees are meeting in subcommittees to come up with what might need to be done in order to meet the guidelines. And then they'll present to the sports medicine committee on Monday and Tuesday of next week. So there could be a little back and forth. If the initial presentation, goes before sports medicine and they say, well, no, this isn't quite enough, we need a little bit more. So there could be some back and forth before it ultimately gets to the board of directors. But basketball, again, I am pretty optimistic that we'll be able to have it. The biggest challenge for us will be more managing practice times. We're hoping to run all 8 levels of basketball, including the middle school teams. We will not have access to some of the gyms that we normally do around the district because the gyms are being used for other purposes due to the circumstances. The high school, as you mentioned, Tom, most of really all the desks actually are around the track. So that's going to create an issue in that sense. But the court itself will actually be cleared of all the storage that's currently on there, thanks to our facilities guys who have already done an amazing job all year long. And now they're kind of getting some more curveballs thrown at them as we ask them to clear out some of this storage so that we can play our winter sports.
And what about hockey? I know some of the arenas closed. Is there any news as far as the New England Sports Center where the Hillers play, or if they'll have an arena available for hockey?
Yeah, so the rinks opened up this past Sunday after a 2-week closure. And, unfortunately, I just think a lot of that was, people not following the rules, to be honest, and it led to some spread and it led to some outbreaks. And I think it just reminds us that we do have to be vigilant. And I think that's what made our fall season successful. The players and the coaches and everyone did a great job, wearing masks and social distancing and doing what we needed to do. So I have been in touch with New England Sports Center and they are reopened. And we will be utilizing that rink for both boys and girls ice hockey again, hopefully. Rinks have put in their own spectator policies. I believe NESC is actually at the moment anyway, allowing 2 spectators per player. Again, that's the rink rule. I know others are not allowing spectators at all. So it's really sort of rink by rink based on their situations and how they feel. The other big thing that's true of all of our sports, but probably impacts hockey the most. Again, it impacts everyone, but no locker rooms can be used. So as you can imagine, with the amount of hockey gear and the skates, that's going to be a bit interesting to navigate that process. But just in my initial conversations, I think people are willing to, similar to the fall, if they got to get changed in the stands and put their skates on and maybe wear a few more things to the rink than they normally do. I think people are willing to do it if it gets them back out there on the ice and playing.
Well, I can't imagine the goalies are too happy about that.
The goalies are definitely tough.
Can't picture the goalie getting off the bus with his pads and everything. That's not enough. But it's like early morning breakfast. You would see the dad and the sons or daughters come in from hockey, an early hockey practice, and they're still in like their gear. Because I remember seeing all my friends with the kids in hockey. They always went to practice it out in gear because they had to get in and out so fast. I just can't imagine a high school player trying to do that in a car or a bus.
Yeah, so I think, again, they can't be in the locker rooms, but the expectation isn't necessarily that they're fully padded when they go in, right? There'll be space where they can, like for the goalie, for instance, that they can put their pads on and stuff. They'll have to have like sort of the bottom layers on, the initial stuff, but, they won't need to be fully padded up. And even the skates, right? I mean, you can just sit on the bench and put your skates on. So they could still wear sneakers into the rink and stuff, so it's going to be a challenge. Don't get me wrong. And I think that's going to be the biggest, I don't want to say issue, but sort of the biggest puzzle we have in front of us is figuring out the logistics. So on the one hand, hockey was given the go ahead, so to speak, to play, but then we also need to make sure that there's 6 feet of spacing on a hockey bench. I don't know if anyone's ever seen a hockey bench. I don't know if there's a foot of space on a hockey bench. So we have a lot of logistical hurdles that we need to figure out. And I'm sure I'm not on that committee, but I'm sure the ice hockey committee is trying to figure out how to make this work so that the kids can still play.
And Rick, I know you said that they've given permission to play games. How can you integrate practices? How many practices can you get in a week before a game? I know outside it's not that big a deal. You can get out and practice, but ice time, or even if they allow basketball, you planning on doing that out on the open field?
No, we'll be playing inside. And so we're still waiting on the official start dates. So the tentative start date for the winter season is November 30th. We don't know if the MIAA will stick with that. I'm sure some of you have seen some leagues have already come out and made an announcement that they're going to start later. I think there's a general concern that cases could spike around the Thanksgiving holiday. So some people, I think, are a little cautious in terms of when we really should start. And then there's just the reality that if we don't find out definitive information until November 20th, 10 days is not a lot of time, especially when Thanksgiving is squished in that period, to figure out all of this before we get started. But we will be practicing as we kind of quote unquote normally would. We do have numerical limitations. So like, for instance, ice hockey can only have 25 players on the ice. A basketball court can only have 25 total players. So again, there's a lot of those pieces that we'll need to navigate. But ultimately, I think they'll be able to practice just like they're going to play. One of the biggest changes, and I think a lot of people have noticed this, but obviously I have to look at this document very, very closely since it pretty much runs my life at this moment in time. The initial EEA guidelines that came out in the fall, and really the reason why, for instance, we don't have corner kicks in soccer, or at least not the traditional corner kicks and the throw-ins, was because the rules stated that you needed to eliminate deliberate contact and reduce intermittent contact. That phrase that I just said is not in the current guidelines. And that's ultimately why hockey has been given the go-ahead. And although not a winter sport, football has also been given the go-ahead to play come fall too. So it's very interesting. In some ways, this new set of guidelines was more restrictive, and in other ways it was a little less restrictive. And from what I've understood in my meetings within our league and with the MIAA, I happen to be on one of these sports committees, so we've had an epidemiologist at this meeting with us, and just their knowledge of transmission and how things happen is changing. So where we had to I know Tom and Mike, you guys have seen me on Saturday and Sunday wiping down the soccer balls and wiping down the field hockey balls. The general sense is that's the chances of transmission is so slim. So they're much more focused on the breathing on the opponent
Right.
than necessarily the touch of the balls.
I'm amazed. I'm sorry. I'm just amazed at these kids, how they can run with those masks on and how they do a good job at it. And you see a lot of them are really comfortable with it. A few times you saw them fall off and whatever. And I see the mouthpieces before that used to go flying out, and the kids would just let them go. But here, the mask would stop, they would stop and readjust it before they continued. So I see that working out really well. My question to you that I have is, with your fans, because everyone forgets about the fans, and these fans are the parents that have dragged these kids everywhere. In the beginning, you weren't going to have any fans, but then you were able to light it up and change it to the 2 per player. How did the parents take that? And do you see a problem going forward if they say no fans for the winter?
So, again, we've learned a lot as, I think, just a society, right, since this all started. And I think everyone erred heavily on the side of caution when we started the fall. We really had 2 goals when we went into the fall season. The first was to make sure sports were run as safely as possible. And if that meant that we needed to err on the side of caution, then that's what we were going to do. And the second part is really like 1B, is we did not want sports to be the reason why schools had to shut down. We really did not want to be in a situation that we were closing school, going remote because of an outbreak on an athletic team. That's just not fair to everybody in the community. So we put a lot of things in place, sort of above and beyond what we needed to make sure that we could do things safely. And then even as the fall season got underway and we saw really what it was going to look like, that's when we came back together as a league, athletic directors and principals, and revisited the idea of spectators. Most of the athletic directors and principals in the league, myself included, are parents. So that was something that, we fully appreciate. As I mentioned to you guys before we got on the air, I'm currently sitting in my truck at my daughter's soccer practice. So I fully appreciate wanting to be there and watching your kids play. And I'm glad we were able to get, fans in to our home contests. And again, at the beginning of the season, the limitation was 50 people, which is really why we did home fans only, 2 per player. That put us at 40, so a little bit under, gave us a little bit of wiggle room. And then thanks to you guys, I mean, I can't say thank you enough for live streaming all of our home games. The feedback has been unbelievably positive. You have people out of state, family members being able to watch this, watch these games live and with play-by-play. So, was it perfect? Absolutely not. We certainly had issues with away fans going to games. And we were not immune to that. I wish we were, but our fans also went to away contests, even though it was against the rules. So I understand it. I understand wanting to watch your son or daughter compete, but we really do need everyone to get on board with the rules, whether they like them or not. Mentioning before, like, I didn't really know why I was wiping down field hockey balls and soccer balls every quarter, but that's what I was asked to do. And I wanted to make sure we kept playing. And so I wiped them down, So, we certainly don't want to limit opportunities for fans. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to make sure that we abide by the guidelines and keep things safe. To your question, Mike, I don't know if we're going to make any league decisions on that. And part of the reason is in the winter in particular is everybody's gym is so different and being used in different manners right now. So some of the situations regarding spectators is largely going to be facility based. Can you even have spectators based on the setup of your gym, how much storage is in your gym, and then also being within the EEA guidelines. I mentioned the hockey spectators. That's largely being determined rink by rink, because they certainly don't want to get shut back down. So we haven't really come up with a clear plan for the winter, and that includes spectators as well. So again, I'm glad we were able to get the spectators in, for the fall season. But I really wish people abided by the rules and didn't go to away games, because that ate up a lot of time every Saturday and Sunday asking people to leave.
Yeah, we saw you. You need to. That's the last thing as you're shagging balls. You want to be telling, hey, you can't sit there. Were there any problems that you heard from other ADs about our Hopkinton parents going to the games?
We had some. The one thing I'm pleasantly or happy about was there was never any issues in terms of anyone being disrespectful or rude or anything like that. If they were asked to leave, they left. Again, I wish they just hadn't gone in the first place.
Right.
Most schools, not all, were able to live stream their games, and I think that also created a different dynamic if for our fans. So if they knew they could stay home and watch the game, they did. For some of the communities that didn't do that, I think we had a few more fans showing up trying to watch the game. And this past weekend, where it was the last games for soccer, I look at like girls soccer, right? Their last game was on the road, and I can appreciate that. It's especially for the senior parents, right? It's their daughter's last game. And they weren't able to watch it. So I from what I understand, I think we had quite a few people over at Bellingham on Sunday. But and again, I can appreciate this, and it's not easy, and I get that. But our goal is just to have opportunities and get the kids playing and just enforce the rules. I don't necessarily agree with all of these rules. I think everyone, that's in a position where you have to enforce the rules. Sometimes you have to enforce things that you don't necessarily agree with, but I also don't want someone saying to me, well, you didn't enforce the rules. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. So now we're not going to be playing. So if we have things, I'm going to enforce them.
That's excellent.
Well, I was wondering, Rick, if you could give us some insight into how the seniors that are playing on these teams this year feel about winding down their high school career towards the end of their season. This may be the last athletic opportunity these players have. Have you had any feedback from them?
So I haven't had a chance to really talk to too many outside of this, conversations on the field. I met with the captains prior to the start of the season. I think the loss of the spring season is really fresh in everyone's mind. And, I think because of that, and I'm certainly not trying to take a positive out of that because that was a horrible situation for everyone losing that season. But I think it did create a new sense of perspective. So even though this was a really challenging season, they weren't even playing the sport they'd played all their lives, by the same rules. There's no state tournaments. There was no even league champion because we played in geographic pods. So it was really about playing. And I think at the end of the day, yes, everyone would have loved to have a state tournament. Everybody would have loved to compete for a league championship. But I think given what we knew at the time, my understanding is that people were pretty happy with what we were able to offer. And the fact that we were able to make it through the season successfully, intact, the players got to be with their teammates and really just get to enjoy being around one another, which is really what sports are all about. I mean, again, it's fun to win. Don't get me wrong. I was an athlete. I was a coach. You want to win. But a lot of times when you're looking back, it's about the relationships that you develop along the way. And I'm just glad we were able to let those relationships happen this year, for our seniors, so they got to play their final season.
Rich, we've interviewed tons and tons of ex-state champions, and when we talk about their old seasons, what they remember most, they remember the practices, the spag dinners, the scavenger hunts, the team building, and all that. Once in a while, you'll remember a certain game, and of course, the state champion or whatever. But you're right; it's the whole experience, and yeah, they got to play some games and have some practices, but no spag dinners, no scav hunt, all those things were out the door.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team camaraderie piece, I think that the teams did get creative in finding ways to do it within the rules, but you're 100% right, Mike. I mean, that's a big part of it. Those social events that really couldn't happen this year. We're not able to have banquets. I think the cross country, cross country is a sport where the boys and girls are generally both there at the same time, cheering each other on. It's just, it's the camaraderie at a cross country race is awesome. And they just couldn't do that, right? We had to run them, the boys had to run and then get out of there. Then the girls came and ran. We couldn't even have JV and varsity travel together on a bus because we had to only have 25 people on a bus. So where you get to see those younger players kind of learn from the older players, that didn't happen. There's a lot of things that we could look back on and wish we had. But again, I think from, my understanding anyways, I think people are pretty happy that they were just given the opportunity, to play and to be with their teammates and, make those memories at practices and in these games. It's certainly, for different reasons, but it's certainly going to be a season they never forget.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Rich, you mentioned that in the state guidelines, they took the contact limitations out of the rules. So does that mean if basketball and hockey occur, which it's looking good right now, there'll be no rule changes, or is there going to be any rule changes that you know
So
of?
we won't know for sure because ultimately, right, schools are held to kind of a higher standard. So the sports medicine committee will tell us if we need to do more. Right. So I'm on the basketball committee. I can't really share much because right now it's all sort of private behind closed doors. But we are certainly not, I can tell you, we're certainly not trying to change the game. I don't anticipate seeing the kind of modifications that you saw this fall in, field hockey and soccer. But again, I don't really know because the sports medicine committee could still say that we do need to do more things to mitigate contact and to mitigate potential exposure and spread. So I'm hopeful, Tom, that we're going to have a few less changes to the rules of the game. And I think the bulk of the changes will be in the administration and management of the game, like setting up the benches and sort of those logistics and roster sizes, things of that nature. But we really won't know until next week, more definitive. But again, I'm certainly hopeful. To Tom's point, to Mike's point, one of the ways they were more restrictive. So Tom, you mentioned that they got rid of the contact, but they actually banned social events. So you actually now cannot have. We really didn't want team dinners happening anyway. Now you actually cannot have them under the EEA guidelines. Then certainly also Baker's most recent executive order, where you have to wear a mask in public, whether or not you're social distanced, is I think another piece that we're going to have to factor into all this.
Rich, you mentioned that you talk about like the lack of banquets and stuff. I don't know if you know, I was over at Hopkinton Country Club on Monday for kind of the golf teams kind of wrap up. It's kind of weird not being able to kind of see an actual banquet go down. I mean, obviously they can kind of, get out of the course, sort of social distance on the course a little bit, and kind of wrap things up in kind of a non sort of, again, banquet style manner, which was kind of interesting to see. But I actually have a question about the winter season. I heard kind of there's a possibility that wrestling could be moved to the fall 2 season because of kind of the close contact of wrestling and everything. Can you kind of speak on that a little bit and kind of what you know? I mean, obviously wrestling is, a very,
Right.
Close proximity sport. Do you know anything kind of about that in terms of maybe that being moved? And
So I really don't know, because right now that's within the wrestling committee. So I'm not sure what they're talking about per se. Certainly I hear the speculation like you guys. I see it on Twitter. I kind of laugh at some of the things I've seen for basketball, that you got to play 2-3 zone and all this, like that stuff. I don't know where people are coming up with this, to be honest. But with wrestling, the one thing I will say is under the current guidelines, they cannot have matches this winter. They are allowed to practice in cohorts of 10. So I could see them maybe pushing it off and hoping that the situation improves. So I could see that as a possibility, because even though, again, they can practice, they can't compete.
right.
So I guess by pushing it down, you do then create potential conflicts where kids would have to choose between sports, but you might also give more of an opportunity for a wrestler to actually get to wrestle in true competition. So it's kind of a catch-22, right? There's some pros and some cons either way.
Right.
The one thing I would say, though, Jared, to that question about fall 2 is I would think it would still have to be indoors at that point. And these EEA guidelines, different than the others, actually specified that these guidelines are for the remainder of the year. Now, I think we all know everything's subject to change nowadays,
Yeah.
right? Things change all the time. But in theory, we're not going to be waiting for a new set of guidelines before the fall 2 season and before the spring season like we were. We've been very beholden waiting for these guidelines before we could do anything for the winter. I'm actually kind of happy that they specified that this is really what we're seeing for the rest of the year. So
Right.
now we can start planning fall 2. We can start planning spring. So hopefully we're more prepared for those seasons and not in the same situation that we're in right now, for the winter. So with that being the case, I'm not sure moving it to fall 2 necessarily helps. And again, maybe you're just holding out hope for whether it's a vaccine or better therapeutic treatments or whatever the case may be. So it's possible. I don't know anything definitive. I've certainly heard those rumors as well. And we should be finding out really in about the next week or so. Once the wrestling committee gets a chance to present to sports medicine and the COVID task force.
Because like you said, that brings up an issue then if it is moved to the fall 2 season of, kids that both wrestle and play football.
Which
What
is
do they
a lot
do?
of-
Do they play football? Do they wrestle? What do they kind of do? I mean, I guess it kind of depends, if they're a senior, what they're kind of doing at the next level. But yeah, that would certainly create a few issues.
I think the goal was always to not create that situation unless it's the only alternative.
Right. Right.
And maybe
makes
we're
sense.
at that point where it's the only alternative. And then unfortunately kids would have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And there could be other winter sports that fall into that category as well. Certainly indoor track. There's conversations right now, not about the sport itself, about the numbers. How do you really
Right, so many
have
teams
that many
yeah.
people indoors for a track meet? I know we can't even we use our track right now because of the desks that are on our entire track. So there's conversations about whether or not that season might get moved, or maybe do we just try to do it outdoors as best we can? And obviously we don't know what the weather's going to bring, but I'm kind of the mindset, let's play whatever we can while we can. We really don't know when we might not be able to play anymore. So even if it's not perfect, I would like to play.
Just let
But,
something happen.
you know,
Make something
but
happen. Yeah.
yeah, so but again, if the MIA says, for instance, to your point, Jared, hey, we're moving wrestling to fall 2, or we're moving it to even the spring season, and you can wrestle outdoors. I don't know what that would look like or how we set that up, but whatever. We'll figure it out, right? It'll be interesting. But so if they say that, then I can't say, no, we're going to wrestle now. Right. So there's some things that we're given leeway in, and then there's other things that if they move a sport like football, right, where they moved it entirely, then it is what it is. We made the decision as a league and as a school to move volleyball, right? So it's a little bit of a catch-22 depending on what we hear back from the MIAA.
Rich, so I know in the fall, most of the games were on weekends, or pretty much all of them were scheduled for weekends because it made things easier as far as buses and officials and things like that. Is it going to be a similar situation this winter? Or do we not know yet?
So we have had preliminary conversations. We certainly haven't been able to set a schedule because there's just still so much up in the air. But I think our goal or our plan, our tentative plan, is to play things on their natural day. So for basketball, for instance, Tuesday, Fridays, and hockey, Wednesday, Saturday. Again, I mentioned before, we've learned a lot, right? So when we did the weekends, we were worried about some situations that did not come to fruition, such as many school districts were not sure if they were going to provide transportation. And we felt that if parents were going to be driving to a 3:30 game, that was going to be difficult. We were also worried about Triple E. Never ended up happening. And then some of the other reasons we moved to the weekends did manifest themselves. We did have an official shortage. So by playing on the weekends, that really helped us with officials. By playing on the weekends, we were able to keep people out of our buildings and just show up dressed, ready to go, ready to play. It also allowed us to stack the games so that we never had 2 events going on at the same time. We didn't even have cross country going on at the same time as, let's say, soccer or field hockey. We really wanted everyone to have their own event so that I could be at every event, that our athletic trainer, Amanda, could be at every event, and just make sure that we were being as safe as possible. So I don't regret going weekends. This past fall, and besides that one weekend where it snowed, we had great weather. We really did. So, I think overall it worked out. My wife might say different since I was gone pretty much all Saturday and Sunday, but I think it did work out. There was certainly some negatives, playing the same team back to back, not a lot of time for recovery between contests. But, given what we knew at the time, I think it was the right call. But I think moving into the winter, people are coming into your building if they're going to play basketball. So whether that's on a Tuesday night or a Saturday, I'm not sure that really matters. And again, I think we want to make as best we can a situation where sports are not happening at the same time, so that I can be at basketball, I can be at hockey, I can be at whatever event we have going on.
Yeah.
So I think we're leaning towards a more traditional schedule once we know what that schedule is really going to look like.
And that's more important, obviously, because you're going to have sports being played at different locations. I mean, you're not going to have hockey. You can't have hockey playing at your school. You got to go over to NESC for that or something. So yeah, that obviously kind of is a little bit more challenging in terms of trying to make sure to get to or making sure obviously that you don't have the sports going at the same time so you can be there. Definitely.
Jared, that's a huge point, right? The fall season, other than the golf course, who was awesome. Hopkinton Country Club is amazing. They're so good to us, getting us on whenever they can. And it was a struggle to find matches. We actually had 4 golf matches canceled. So not canceled, but postponed and rescheduled. So out of their 10 matches, 4 had to be rescheduled due to COVID. 2 of them happened to be the day that Hopkinton shut down for 2 days. And then we also, Ashland shut down for a couple of days, the 2 days we were supposed to play Ashland. And thankfully we were able to make up all of those matches. And then I think we had a 5th one rescheduled due to weather. So 50% of their matches had to be rescheduled. And, HCC was great and was able to sneak us in there and get us in there so the kids could have their matches. But, we're now dealing with that really for every sport other than basketball and wrestling. Swimming, right? We use a pool that's off-site.
Yep.
Alpine ski obviously is off-site.
Yep. Hockey off-site.
Hockey is off-site. And although indoor track practices kind of on site, our meets are not on site. If they're true indoor track and field meets. They're either at Wheaton or the Reggie Lewis Center, and the Reggie Lewis Center is not even open
Right.
at the moment. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues. Just the fact that we rely so heavily on these outside facilities. Even gymnastics, which we don't host gymnastics. We have traditionally co-opted with Westboro, but that's again, now we're dealing with another school, another gym, all types of things. And then these places also have limitations on how many people can be in there at any one time. So there's a lot of logistical pieces that do need to be resolved. And I think that's why you might see the winter season get pushed back to make sure that those issues can all be ironed out before we get started.
Figured out, yeah.
Have you started working on a schedule at all yet?
So we actually met as a league yesterday. We had about 12 agenda items. After 2 hours, we had made it through about 3. So it was, it was a very lively decision, but we ultimately decided that, we're planning, but we didn't really solidify anything because we just don't know. I mean, the MIA could say that we're not starting until December 7th, December 14th, or you can't play games until this day, or you need to have 10 days of preseason, or we don't really know what they're going to say. So we've started the parameters of what we'd like to do, but until we get that information, we can't really, put it in stone, which again, to Jared's point, it's really hard to schedule ice time for games.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
I don't know when the games are.
Well,
and I do think we're planning at this moment to go back to big and small for scheduling purposes. We did those geographic pods, which again, I think worked out. Again, we kind of thought parents would be doing more driving. So we wanted to try to eliminate those really long drives for people. But I think every school was at least willing to provide transportation. I'm not sure that they all necessarily utilized it. I know there was some coaches that didn't feel comfortable due to their age. They didn't really want to be on the bus, so they just made the whole team drive. But I think transportation was at least an option. So I think we're leaning towards going back to big and small to kind of even out the competition level. Again, I think we were fortunate. I think our games were really good this fall. But I think for some of those smaller schools in particular, having to constantly play much bigger schools than you, it can be difficult. So I think we want to try to make the competition as equitable as possible.
It's what's interesting again there with that point, talking to some of the golfers and talking to Bill, your golf coach, the other day. I know one thing they were kind of a little bit, they kind of got to them a little bit. I think again was, they were obviously able to play and that was great, but I think they were a little unhappy that they weren't able to play schools like DS and Westwood, in Medfield, some of those schools that give them kind of some of that better competition, because you obviously have a very talented golf team.
Mm-hmm.
And I know your only loss last year was to Westwood. So some of the kids were like, normally we play those schools twice, didn't even get to play those schools once this year, and that's not discounting other schools like Holliston or Ashland or whatever with, that have golf teams that you're able to play. But yeah, I just know that was kind of a little bit of a, something that I kind of found, when talking to them the other day. So that's kind of, I'm sure that's probably a little bit dicey, but.
Again, it was just a decision we made, based on the
Right.
information that we had at the time. And now we're sort of evolving and changing, because I do think we want the games, to be as equitable. We really just want them to play.
Right, exactly.
But now we'd like them to be, as equitable as possible. And it's not fair to a smaller school to be losing every single game or match, because they're, playing someone that they, has hundreds more students than they do. And our league in general is pretty spread out in terms of enrollment. So it can be a challenge to begin with. And then every school kind of has the sports that they traditionally do really well in, right? So, so it just kind of the way it worked out, some of the smaller schools that were in our pod, happen to be like, so you look at like a Medway, their boys and girls soccer teams are phenomenal. So it wasn't like
really
we were
good,
playing a quote unquote small school. Those are really tough competitive games. Our girls soccer played them back to back. I think it went like 150 minutes before the first goal was scored, because it was 0-0 on Saturday. And then we scored late in the second game to win 1-0. I mean, it was a battle. It was a great game. So the big and small does matter, but it's also very sport by sport, who does sort of better in some sports versus others.
Right. I think in a sport like basketball, it's pretty even, big and
Yeah.
small, because there's some really good small teams too.
Yep.
So what's the big day? We'll know everything.
So
The
I
20th, right?
believe I could be wrong. I don't have it in front of me. I think the board of directors will finally kind of sign off on everything November 20th. We should start to get a little bit more inklings of things through next week. But I think by next Friday, we should really have a clear idea of kind of what sports are going, what modifications they might have, so that we can really then start the planning process. But again, the unfortunate part is the following week, boom, you're in Thanksgiving.
Right.
So having this all come down to next Friday does complicate things a little bit, because then you got to start reaching out, as we just talked about, to all these outside facilities and try to scramble together, schedules. So, we're meeting. I mentioned I'm on the basketball committee. We had met 4 times before the EEA guidelines came out. We've met twice since. We're meeting with the full committee on Thursday. We've already met as a league twice. We have another meeting scheduled, so we're constantly meeting. And sometimes we don't really decide much because we're still in limbo. But there's just a lot of meetings going on that I know it's probably frustrating for people. Like, what's taking so long? Why can't they just make decisions? But we're kind of waiting for some decisions to be made so that we can then, make our decisions as a league and as a school, because ultimately I'm going to have to speak with, Mr. Bishop and Dr. Kavanaugh and, Sean McAuliffe at the Board of Health, and make sure everyone's on board with what our plan is. It's so different. I never talked to Sean McAuliffe about whether or not we could play basketball this way. Right. But now these were the things that are kind of part of the process this year. And that's fine. We'll do what we have to do to get the students back out there playing.
Well, Rich, thank you for the great information, and we are certainly looking forward to seeing what happens, and excited to hear that more likely than not, there will be basketball and hockey. Nothing's set in stone, but thanks so much for the great information, and go enjoy the rest of your daughter's soccer practice.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch a scrimmage now. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having
Thanks,
me.
Rich.
And,
Keep us
again, I
invited.
can't say thanks enough for all the live streaming that you guys have done. It's been an absolute blessing for our families. And also just to have that video. So thank you so much. And I'll see you guys Saturday for field hockey.
Absolutely.
Be
And
there.
of course, we'll be there for the winter sports as well. Thanks so much, Rich.
Thanks,
Take it easy,
Rich.
guys.
That is Rich Cormier, Hopkinton High School Athletic Director. Some great information there, guys. And it's looking good. Everything that he said as far as basketball, hockey, it's looking like we're pretty much going to have a full winter season. So obviously we don't know. Nothing's set in stone. So if something doesn't happen, don't blame us. But
Let's pencil them in.
I
for
like
the
what I'm
25th.
hearing. I like what I'm hearing.
Tom, I would bet that wrestling gets moved to fall too. If
I would too.
If I was a betting man, I would bet that wrestling gets moved to fall too. Again, just because you're right on top of each other, you're breathing on each other all the time. You're always together in kind of close proximity, everything, practicing together.
Yeah, we're not ready.
Well, the thing is, though, Rich mentioned those state guidelines are for the rest of the year. So I don't know if anything's going to change with wrestling. They might not be able to have matches unless they change one of the guidelines as far as wrestling. But they might not be able to have matches throughout the rest of the year. So if they can't have matches,
I mean, that's the thing. They want to have matches. They want to be able to compete.
Right.
So,
right. That's the point of playing. But I guess some of them would go and just practice, I guess, or maybe have internal matches against each other. But it doesn't sound like they can have external matches. But like everything else, I guess we'll wait and see. Hopefully they'll have a wrestling.
Hopefully that changes.
And hopefully they'll have all the other sports that we love to cover. But it sounded like all pretty positive news for the winter sports season. And it was nice to hear that they relaxed those guidelines as far as contact, because I think that's huge as far as having basketball, hockey, and football.
Well, we're going to have to pencil Rich back for the 25th, Tom, because if they're meeting that Friday or Monday, let's get some answers. So pencil them in for the 25th. Get on that now.
You got it, boss.
Well, only because it's the night before Thanksgiving, and since everybody else's Thanksgiving is in the toilet, it might as well get him on here. He should be free for an hour.
Absolutely. We'll pencil them in.
There you go.
All right. So why don't we get into NFL picks? Week 10. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Let's take a look at what happened last week. Andy Barron was the grand champion last week. Andy
don't know
Barron from IFM. He went 11-3. Definitely his best week yet, I believe.
Yep.
Me and Bob went 10-4. So it's an honor to tie Bob. Mike went 9-5.
Yeah.
But what we expect out of him.
Oh.
And Ethan went 8-6.
Ooh,
So,
Ethan.
Well, Eddie,
6.
you know, he took some long shots and he said, you know, hey, you know, we all went one way and he just said nope, and you can see he wound up choosing right.
You know, it's funny because Andy would have went 12-2 if he didn't pick the Jets.
Oh man. Oh.
But he still beat all of us. So
Yeah.
he had a good week.
He was close too. He would have been close on the Jets. I mean, that was what
Absolutely.
a ridiculous game that was. Give me a break.
I don't even know how that was close.
Yeah.
Flacco does not have it anymore.
Yeah. Do you guys still feel optimistic about the Patriots this year?
No.
After the way they played the Jets?
I feel optimistic that maybe they can go 7-9. Maybe. It's a big maybe.
They're more like the New England football team.
Yeah, right.
There's definitely no Patriot team.
It's a good thing they don't have statistics on how many sick people aren't at the stadium because of the coronavirus. The seats
I mean,
would
it
be
goes to
empty
show you
anyway.
the state of the Patriots when Andy is picking the Jets.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, when you're actually picking the Jets in that game.
And it really shows you the state when he was almost right.
When he was almost right. Exactly.
But in any case, let's get into this week on Thursday Night Football.
I'm excited to get back here, Tom. I'm excited to be back getting some picks in. I know I've been off for a couple of weeks here now, so it's good to be back.
So
and
you
getting
can
some
show
picks
us your brilliance, Jared.
It's good to have you back. And
Bob, you're the only brilliant one. You picked a tie, Bob. I mean, geez.
Yeah, tie. Yeah.
The most legendary pick ever.
Yep.
All right, so
let's do it.
Thursday Night Football. We got the 5-3 Indianapolis Colts and the 6-2 Tennessee Titans. I think the Colts are falling off a little bit. I think they're good. They'll be pretty competitive, but I think the Titans are going to take Thursday Night Football. I like the way they're playing lately. Mike, what do you got?
Well, it kills me to do this, but I agree with you, Tom. Tennessee.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, after they beat the Bears last week and they're playing the Colts this week, I got to pick the Titans. I got beat up too bad by them this year.
Yeah, the Bears haven't helped you this year.
No.
Jared, who you got?
I'm making it 4 for 4. I'm going with the Titans. You know, I mean, you know, when you got Derrick Henry on your team and the way Tannehill had been playing and you got some talented receivers, I mean, you know, I don't think there's any reason not to go with the Titans. Although I think this could be closer than people think. But I'm going to the Titans.
Yeah, I think it will be a pretty good game. These two teams usually play each other close. All right, so the 2-6 Houston Texans against the 5-3 Cleveland Browns. I think this is a game that absolutely anything can happen, and I have no idea what to expect. I'm gonna go with the Browns. Mike, what do you got?
I'm going Browns too. You know, they're coming off a bye week, so you know my teams usually do good off of their bye weeks.
All right, Bob.
I'm going to go Browns. I don't think Texas is going to make it this year.
All right, Jared.
I agree with you, Tom, that I think anything could happen here. And I think for that reason, I'm going to kind of slightly go out on a limb and I think go with the Texans.
All right.
You know, I mean, you know, I think Odell Beckham being out for the Browns is a little tough. And, you know, I mean, Jarvis Landry is talented and they have some other talent. But, again, in kind of a game, like you said, where sort of anything can happen, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Texans.
All righty. I like it. 2-6 Washington against 3-5 Detroit.
Oh, woof.
Detroit, I guess, has played a little better lately. I guess I'll go Detroit in this one. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, you know what? It's going to be one of those close games that, you know, that I think Bob could almost call a tie with, but I'm going to go Detroit.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, if there could be two losers, I'd pick them. But
they could tie.
Yeah.
So
No.
somebody has to win.
No.
All
I'm
right.
going to pick Washington, formerly
like
known as the Redskins.
Oh man.
All right,
I
Jared.
agree with Bob that I think both teams could lose here somehow. Geez, I really have no idea here, man. This is
Flip
This is
that
about
coin.
as
Flip that coin.
crazy as it gets. I don't know, man. Give me the Lions.
All righty.
Who knows?
1-7 Jags at the 6-2 Packers. Does anyone want to go with Jacksonville? I'll just throw that out there.
No, I'm going Packers.
All right.
Packers.
Devontae Adams is an absolute animal. He is so good.
He is, absolutely.
And
All right.
Rodgers has been lighting up the defense, so I like it.
Yeah.
Packers across the board. Okay, the 3-4-1 Eagles against the 2-7 Giants.
Oh my God.
This is going to be brutal. I guess I'll go Eagles. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, I think the Eagles. Yeah. I think the Eagles are a little healthier. So
Bob?
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Eagles. I don't know why, because they're both stink, but I don't like the Giants anyway, so I'll pick the Eagles.
All right,
I mean, I don't
Jared.
like either team, and I think this division absolutely is terrible. I mean,
It
what
is.
an awful division. I think I've said it before on here, but man, I mean,
yeah, the division's terrible, right?
I'm going with the Eagles.
All righty. The 6-3 Buccaneers at the 3-6 Panthers. Boy, did Tampa Bay do absolutely nothing last week against New Orleans. They have to respond this week. I would imagine Tampa Bay wins this game. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, Tampa Bay.
All
They
right,
got to do
Bob.
it this one.
Yeah, they ruined me last week. I picked the Bucks last week, and they were disgusting.
They ruined everybody. Well,
So
actually,
I'll give them
no.
another chance this week. I'm picking the Bucks.
All right, Jared.
I'm going to the Bucks. I think it's a big rebound week for them, and I know that Christian McCaffrey is actually out for the Panthers this week. He injured a shoulder or something. So
Oh,
I mean, him
pretty
being out
good.
is obviously a huge loss for the Panthers. So Bucks it is.
That will hurt them for sure. Here's an interesting matchup: the 3-5 Broncos at the 5-3 Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know what to expect in this game. It could really go either way. I'm going to go with the Raiders here. I feel like they're just a little bit better than that Broncos team. Mike, what do you got?
Well, I think the Raiders will do it. Carr's getting the better. We'll get the better of Drew, and I think they won 2 straight. I think they're on a streak here.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, I picked the Raiders. That's Las Vegas, so I got to roll the dice with the Raiders.
Oh, hey.
All
Good
right, Jared.
I'm going to the Raiders. The Raiders.
The
That really does.
The 2-6 Chargers at the 5-3 Dolphins. Does anyone want to go with the Chargers here? Well, don't all speak.
I might. I'm thinking about it. I'm
Okay.
thinking about it.
Mike and Bob, are you on Miami?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Herbert's gonna do great in passing, but I'm gonna go Miami. It's a chance. There is a chance. You put a star next to that one for me, will you?
Chargers just can't find a way to win.
I know.
They'll probably get up by 17 and blow it.
They
Tom,
both
Tom, I'm
go
going with the
halfway.
Chargers.
Wow.
The Chargers.
I talked him into it.
Yeah,
Wow.
I talked Jared into a loss.
you bullied him into it.
See, that's what
Um,
happens when he makes me go second, Jared.
All right, Bob, you're Miami, right?
Yep.
Okay, 7-2 Bills at the 5-3 Cardinals. This is going to be a great game, actually. Both of these teams have high hopes. Both of them are very good teams, great offenses. This game's going to be high scoring, I feel like. I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going Arizona. Mike, what do you got?
Well, I was thinking that too. I mean, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. It's going to be a fun game to watch. But look at a lot of points. I'm going to go Bills.
All right,
Close, a
Bob.
lot of points, I think, though.
Yeah, I'm going with the Bills. I think they finally believe that they can win, and I think they're going to.
I
This
like
will be
it.
a big test for them this week, though.
It will be. This is going to be a good one. Jared, what do you got?
I'm going to the Bills as well. I think coming off a win over the Seahawks, again, I think is going to give them a ton of confidence. The way Josh Allen played as well. I think this is going to be a tremendous game to watch. And I think it could be close. I think it could definitely be close. I could see this being like, 31-28 or something.
I could see this being 45-42.
Yeah. But give me the Bills here. But Tom, I like your Cardinals pick. I do like the Cardinals pick, but give me the Bills.
All right. Yeah, the Cardinals I feel like can upset anybody, so maybe they'll get one this week. Help the Patriots out. The 6-2 Seahawks and the 5-3 Rams. I can't imagine Seattle losing 2 in a row. I'm going Seattle here. Mike, what do you got?
That's a tough one. You know what? Again, the Rams are coming off the bye. You know how I like that. So let's go by Rams.
All right, Bob.
I'm going with the Rams. I think Seattle is on a downward spiral. I don't see them pulling it out.
Their defense is really questionable. Jared.
Their defense is certainly questionable, but I'm with you, Tom. I don't see them losing 2 in a row. I think Russell Wilson really gets after it this week. Has a huge week. Give me the Seahawks.
All right, I like it. The 4-5 49ers and the 6-2 Saints. The 49ers are just an injured mess. I'm going Saints. Is anyone not going with the Saints?
This is going to be the blowout game of the week.
I think
Saints.
so. All right, Saints it is. 2-5-1 Bengals at the 8-0 Steelers. Bengals are playing a little better. I think they'll keep it interesting, but I'm going.
I'll pick the Jets.
Anyone going with the Bengals?
No, but I think they will keep it interesting.
I do too. I think it'll be closer. Oh, look at the Cowboys Steelers last week. The game went all the way down to the end.
Yep.
Divisional game, you never know what to expect.
You think Roethlisberger will get off of COVID by then and play?
Is he on COVID?
He's on
He's on the
COVID.
list. He doesn't have COVID though.
Oh, he's on the list, right?
I think he was just beat up or something. Oh, that's true. He did get hurt last week, so he is questionable for this game.
Does he get hurt?
But even if he doesn't play, I still think the Steelers will win. But I think it'll be a close game, though. I really do. 6-2 Ravens, 3-5 Patriots. Nice win by the Patriots. A great field goal by Nick Folk. It was against the 0-8 Jets. It shouldn't have took you all the way to the last second.
Is anybody picking the Patriots here? Anybody picking the Patriots?
I'm not. I'm picking Baltimore.
I'm going Baltimore.
Anyone picking Pats?
Give me my Lamar Jackson. Come on.
All right. Baltimore for everybody.
Those mean old Ravens are going to beat up the Patriots.
I think so. Monday Night Football. The 3-5 Vikings and the 5-4 Bears. This is going to be a pretty good game. The Vikings are starting to play better. A lot
Give
better.
me the Vikings. Tom, give me the Vikings.
All right. I'm going Vikings as well.
You
Dalvin
guys
Cook-
are just
Dalvin
doing
Cook.
that because I'm going the Bears.
Oh,
Wow.
One of these times I got to be right.
we'll have to add up how many losses the Bears cost Bob.
This Bob could be right this time, so I'm going to go with the Bears.
All right. Excellent. And there it is. That is it. Teams on the bye week. Falcons, Cowboys, Chiefs, Jets. The picks are in. It should be interesting.
Oh, that's good, Tom. The Jets can't lose this week.
Yep.
That's true. That's true. I think they're eyeing that number 1 pick after the
They have to.
Patriots last week. I really think they're trying to win that game, though, because why not? They would love to hand the Patriots another loss. But it was nice to finally see Cam Newton play pretty well and get the offense going. I guess the most promising thing about that game is what they did in the second half and the fact that guys like Demir Bird and Jacoby Myers
Jacoby Myers had a great game. What a game he had, man.
What
He had like 12 catches for like 150 yards or something.
Yeah, it was like 169 or something like that. It was good, though, to see a couple of receivers actually chip in. And in the first half, the offense was totally dead. But in that second half, there was some bright spots for sure. So who knows? Maybe these receivers are going to get better as the season goes on and maybe be valuable next year. I also like Demir Bird a lot. I think you have something there.
Yeah.
You better hurry up. The season's running out fast.
It is. One thing that worries me is the injury to Harris. That's unfortunate because I liked him. Hopefully he'll be back. I don't know the extent of the injury, but he looked good. They did bring in James White, so that helped when Harris left. But
We're getting down there, Tom. We got
they
about
got
a minute.
the win. All right, so I think that's going to do it. A big thank you to Rich Cormier. Big thank you to Bob, Jared, and Mike. And all the veterans out there, happy Veterans Day. And thanks for joining us on HCAM Sports Talk Live. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll talk to you again soon.